Good morning, Miss Rachel.
Good morning. How's everyone feeling today? Okay, guys, let's have a look. So, Trixie, I would like to show Trixie's homework. Good job on your homework, Trixie. Can you do us all a favor and read out your wonderful sentences? Okay, so let's begin. Have a look, guys, at my screen. Keep your journeys book closed for right now. Winter, can you please read about mountains for me?
Mountains. Mountains are high, elevated landforms that are found all over the world. Some are high and snow-capped. Others are rounded and covered with trees. Still, others are smoking volcanoes. The most common kind are fault mountains, such as the Alps in Europe. These were created long ago when two plates of Earth's crust collided. In Mountains Surviving on Mount Everest, you'll read about a 16-year-old boy who climbs Mount Everest, tallest mountain on Earth.
Ooh, lovely reading. Thanks, Winter. Okay, guys, so in our selection today, we're going to be reading about a young boy, only 16 years old, who climbs up Mount Everest, the world's tallest mountain. Let's have a look, guys. So our selection today is called Mountains Surviving on Mount Everest, and the genre is an informational text. Thailand B, can you please read this for me?
Information text.
Informational
text gives facts about a topic. As you read, look for headings that tell about the content of sections, photographs, and captions. Graphic features such as maps and diagrams.
Good job. Well done, Thailand B. Okay, so informational texts tell us facts about a topic. As we read the selection today, look for headings that tell you about the content of different sections. Look for photographs and captions, and we're also going to look for graphic features such as maps and diagrams. All of these features let you know that we're reading an informational text. Okay, so our story is surviving on Mount Everest. Have a look at the essential question. Hacker, can you read it for me?
Why do mountain climbers need to be well prepared?
Okay, so before we start, I actually want us to talk about this question. Before we even read the story, what do you think? Why do you think mountain climbers need to be well prepared? If you are a person who climbs mountains, why must you be well prepared before you set off on your journey? Why is that important? Rosie, what do you think?
I think is they need to be well prepared because sometimes they can have an injury or the temperature it changing it is too cold or too hot, so they can have some like equipment or things that they can use.
Absolutely, good job, well done. So basically, if you are ill prepared, that means that you're not prepared very well. If you are ill prepared to go out on an expedition up a mountain, it can be life threatening. So it can be extremely dangerous when you're climbing up a mountain. As Rosie touched on, the temperatures can change drastically. It can get cold, you might get too hot if you're exercising a lot. So you need to make sure you've got things in place to help you deal with those. So you need to make sure you've got lots of water to keep yourself hydrated. You need to make sure that you've got a tent with a really thick and warming sleeping bag to make sure that you don't freeze overnight when you have to sleep and stop. There are lots of things that mountain climbers need to prepare and lots of equipment that they need to bring with them before heading out on their big expedition. Okay, guys, so as we read the story today, think about why mountain climbers need to be well prepared for their expeditions. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to start sharing the Journeys book so we can begin reading. Okay, guys, so I will ask you to read certain paragraphs at a time. So I will call on your name and I'll ask you to read. When I call your name, I'm asking you to unmute and to pick up where someone else has left off. This means you must be following along at all times, otherwise you won't know where we are. If you don't know where we are, that shows everybody that you haven't been following along. So please make sure you're following along with our very interesting text today. Okay, who would like to read about the author? Who would like to do that today?
Me, dear, enjoys extreme adventures. Has been to the foothills of Mount Everest, the highest mountain in the world. Several years ago, while touring Africa, he got lost in the Sahara, the world's largest desert. That adventure might have helped him later to write Deserts, Surviving in the Sahara. Other extreme books by Sandra include Oceans, Surviving in the Deep Sea, and Rainforest, Surviving in the Amazon.
Good girl. Thanks for reading, Lily. Well done. Okay, so this is Michael Sandler, and clearly he is a bit of a thrill seeker. He enjoys extreme adventures. He actually got lost in the Sahara Desert, which is the world's largest desert. And then that helped him write his book, Deserts, Surviving in the Sahara. Some of his other books he has written are Oceans, Surviving in the Deep Sea, all about how you can survive in the depths of the ocean. And also, he's written a book about rainforests in the Amazon. So he is definitely a thrill seeker who likes to go on extreme adventures. Okay, guys, let's begin reading Mountains, Surviving on Mount Everest. Can you please read this first paragraph for me, Bao Kang?
The clock showed almost midnight. The temperature was freezing. Ice went rolled by. A group of people holding the test on a rocky ridge. In moment,
Ridge.
in moment, they would begin the final stage of a dangerous journey. They were climbing to the top of Mount Everest, the world highest mountain.
Good job. Thanks for reading Bao Kang. And can you please read for me all about Temba? Can you please read that for me? I'll go for Trixie.
Among the climbers was Temba Sherpa. Just 2 weeks before, Temba had celebrated his 16th birthday. Now he was trying to survive in one of the world's most extreme places. Making it to Everest was Temba's dream. He would be the youngest person ever to reach the summit.
Very.
29,135 or 8,850 meters high.
Good job. So it's a very, very, very tall mountain. He was going to be the youngest person ever to reach the summit or to reach the peak, which is 29,000 feet high in the sky. So it is a very, very, very tall mountain. Okay, how does the author support the idea that climbing Mount Everest is dangerous? On these 2 pages, what are some details that you can find that support the idea that climbing Mount Everest is dangerous? Bilay, are you there?
Yes, I think the answer for your question is that the temperature was freezing. Icy winds roared by. A group of people huddled in the darkness.
Okay, so I think you muted yourself because you're in a loud area. But yes, what you were saying was correct. The temperature was freezing, icy winds roared by, and a group of people are huddling in the darkness on a rocky ridge. So a ridge is like an edge. So if you're huddling together in the dark on the edge of something, that's pretty dangerous. So yes, these are the ways and the details that the author is showing us that climbing Mount Everest is a dangerous expedition. Turn over the page, please. Okay, what are mountains? Can you read that for me, please, Cherry?
What are mountains? Mountains are a type of tall landform. They rise high above the area around them.
They rise high.
Mountains are taller than hills. They can rise thousands of feet, kilometers in the air. They are found all over the world, even beneath the sea. A group of mountains is called a range. The biggest mountain range in North America is the Rocky Mountains. The Andes in South America is the world's longest range.
Good job. Well done, Cherry. So here we have a little map to support what this text is saying. It's showing all the different mountain areas in the world. We have the Rocky Mountains, the Andes, the Atlas Mountains, the East African Mountains, and the Himalaya Mountains, which is where Mount Everest is here in Asia. Okay, guys. How are the words landforms, mountain, and range connected? Have a look. How are the words landform, mountains, and range connected? How are these words connected? What do they mean?
It's a type of tall landform,
Yeah.
and range is like a group of mountains.
Good girl. Perfect answer, Lily. So landform, mountains, and range are all connected because mountains are a type of tall landform. And a range of mountains, a group of mountains is called a range. So when we have more than one mountain in an area together, we call it a range of mountains. Good girl, Lily. Okay, guys, let's move on to the next page. Can you please read that for me? I'd like a boy this time. Let's have Hacker. Mount Everest.
Mount Everest, the mountain Temba was climbing, is part of the
Himalaya.
Himalaya Mountains. The name Himalaya means home,
Hacker, are you there?
10 tallest mountain on earth.
Okay, good job. Sorry, I'm not sure if the internet cut out a little bit there. So Himalaya means home of snow. This Asian range is the world's highest. It includes 9 of the 10 tallest mountains on Earth. Good job. So that is where Temba is going. He is climbing Mount Everest, which, as I said, is part of the Himalaya Mountains over here. The Himalaya Mountains are here. Okay, wonderful. Let's have a look at this little fact at the bottom over here. It says mountains cover 1/4 of Earth's land surface. So we've got 1/4 of our Earth is covered in land mountains. So that's quite a lot of our Earth. Okay, mountain conditions. Who can read this whole paragraph for me? I would like Kimmy to read, please.
Mountain conditions. As Temba approached Everest summit, survival became harder and harder. Mountain conditions get more extreme the higher a person climbs. Air contains less and less oxygen as the altitude increases. Breathing becomes nearly impossible. Thin air can cause headaches and dizziness. At 10,000 feet, 3,048 higher up, it can be deadly. Humans cannot survive for long at the top section of mountains like Everest. Hurricane force winds can reach 130 miles per hour, 209
Kilometers.
kilometers. Temperatures can plummet to
Minus
100
degrees Fahrenheit, which is also the same as minus 73 degrees Celsius.
during the night. Blowing snow makes it harder to see. Temba was headed here.
Good job, well done. Temba was headed here. Okay, so as you can see from this page, mountain conditions are rough. The higher you get and the higher altitude that you get to, the less oxygen you have. So breathing becomes extremely difficult and nearly impossible. So when we have a high altitude, we say that the air is thin. That means it's lacking oxygen. It feels like it's thin air. Good job. Okay, so I'm going to have a look down here at this little fact. Frostbite can happen when it's so cold that hands, feet, and other parts of the body freeze solid. Frostbite can cause people to lose fingers, toes, even their noses. So obviously, when you are working around or even just living for a few days in minus 73 degrees Celsius, they are extreme temperatures. That is extremely, extremely cold. So frostbite is a real problem that many climbers have to face. They need to make sure that they are well equipped with the right clothing, things like gloves, things like hats, scarves, thermals, jackets, goggles to protect them from the bright light and from the freezing cold. Okay, over here. Can you please read for me? Okay, go ahead, Lily. You wanted to read. Why do people
people climb mountains? People climb mountains for many reasons. Some enjoy the thrill of being high above the clouds. Others like the challenge of testing their skills. For decades, however, reaching the top of Everest was a test that no climber could pass. The first attempts to climb Everest were made during the
1920s.
1920s. Again and again, the climbing teams stopped short of their goal. Avalanches, storms, sickness, and exhaustion brought them to a halt. Then, in 1953, two climbers finally succeeded, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay.
Good girl.
Hillary was from New Zealand. Norgay was a Sherpa from Nepal.
Lovely, well done. So Nepal is the area in which the Himalayan mountains are in. So Hillary was a man from New Zealand and Tenzing Norgay was from Nepal. He was a Sherpa. He was someone who lived amongst the cold mountains. Good job. So in 1920, here they are. These two men were able to be the first people to make it to the top of Mount Everest, and they are showing off their survival equipment in 1953. They're showing off their masks and their tanks, their goggles, their really thick jackets. And obviously this is a huge achievement to overcome, to succeed in being the first people to make it to the top of the highest mountain in the world. Okay, let's keep reading. Let's going back to Temba. Okay, I'd like a boy this time, and I would like, okay, Billy, I can see you with your hand raised. Can you go ahead and read this for me?
Without oxygen, Temba couldn't.
Temba's mistake.
Temba's mistake. Temba had tried to climb Everest before. It ended, however, in failure. I didn't have enough training or proper equipment, Temba said. He was almost at the summit when his oxygen supply ran out. Without oxygen, Temba couldn't think clearly. He made a terrible mistake. He took off his gloves to tie his boots. His fingers froze. Temba suffered frostbite on both hands. He had to turn back just 70 feet, 21 meters from his goal. The next time around, however, Temba was prepared. He had trained hard. He had the right equipment, thanks to his classmates and teachers that raised money for his trip.
Good job. So guys, have a think. What does Temba have in common with the other mountain team in the 1920s? What do you think, Han?
I think that he have same thing with the climbers in the 2020 is that he also he all of the people who climb through the time always need a equipment and an oxygen tank.
Mm-hmm. Good. So yeah, they all needed the same equipment. Absolutely. So yeah, you are right. They all needed the same equipment, but the common thing that they share is that they were not prepared enough. So in the 1920s, we learned that again and again, the climbing teams stopped short of their goal. Avalanches, storms, sickness, and exhaustion brought them to a halt. So in the 1920s, no one was able to make it to the top, and that's what Temba has in common with them. Think about how frustrating this would be. So Temba had tried to climb Mount Everest before, but he failed. He was almost at the top when his oxygen supply ran out. And without his oxygen, he couldn't think clearly. So when you lose oxygen, you're starving your brain of oxygen. So your brain doesn't work anymore. You start acting quite crazy and doing silly things and maybe talking in silly ways that you wouldn't usually do. So it made him feel a little bit loopy. He wasn't thinking straight and accidentally takes off his gloves in the freezing cold and ties his boots. Now, that's just to show you how cold it is in a place like this. By just having gloves off for maybe 5 minutes, you can freeze your hands to the point where you have to get your fingers removed. You have to get your fingers amputated. That's how seriously cold it is in areas like this. Here we have a little graphic feature to tell us some survival equipment. A climbing suit to protect against the cold, gloves to keep hands warm and dry, goggles to protect eyes from the sun's harmful rays and the reflection of snow, your oxygen mask that is linked to an oxygen tank to help breathing at the highest altitudes, an ice axe to help climb slopes and break up ice, climbing ropes to climb up slopes, trekking poles to help you stay balanced, and mountain boots with spikes to help you make sure that you don't slip and fall. Okay, let's have a look over here. Can you please read it for me, Rosie? Camp to camp.
Camp to camp. Temba's second try began in April 2001. Mount Everest sits between Nepal and
Tibet.
Tibet. There are several different routes to the top. Temba would take a route from the north. The Tibetan side. Climbers move from one camp to the next higher one and then rest for a while. At each camp, their bodies get used to the higher altitudes. Temba spent several weeks moving between camps with his team. At Camp 3, the team waited for a break in the weather. Winter was over, but there had been a series of
severe
snowstorms. Getting cold snows in a snowstorms farther up the mountain would be deadly.
Lovely reading. Thanks, Rosie. So, Temba's second try began in April. So he's trying again. He's very determined to make sure he gets to the top. And he decides to take the Tibetan route. And this map shows us the climb up Everest officially begins at the base camp. Climbers stay in tents there so their bodies can get used to the lower levels of oxygen. So your base camp is still 17,500 feet up. Once you have trekked up here, you will stay there maybe 1, 2, even 3 days, as long as you want to let your body get used to the lower levels of oxygen, so that as you begin your really steep incline, your body can keep getting used to it. So every time you see a base or a camp, that's where people stop for the day or maybe 2 days, and they take a break and they try to let their bodies get adjusted to the low levels of oxygen. Okay, turn over the page. Okay, I would like the climb along the ridge. Can you please read that for me? I would like Noob.
The camp along the ridge. On May 20, Temba's team reached Camp 4. Then the climbers headed out on the Great Ride leading to the
This is ridge.
Leading to the summit. Temba plugged his axe into ice walls, pulling himself up. He still
Steadied
himself against 50 miles per hour winds. Yet he climbed higher and higher. Temper had Temper had to move fast or die. Darkness stopped him before he got to Camp 5. His team
His team had gone
his team has gone
ahead.
ahead. Luckily, Temper found a tent. He spent night
Frightened
he spent night frightened um,
and alone.
and alone. The next day, Temper rejoined his team. They reached Camp 6, one day's climb from their goal.
Lovely reading. Thanks, Noob. Okay, so the climb along the ridge is quite a difficult one. He had to plunge his axe into ice wall, pull himself up, steady himself against 50-mile-per-hour winds. So winds like that would be able to blow you off your feet. They could knock you over. So you have to steady yourself and make sure that you're pushing against it. But this didn't stop him. He's climbing higher and higher. He had to move fast or die. Darkness stopped him before he got to Camp 5, but his team had gone ahead already. Thankfully, he found a tent, but he spent the night frightened and alone. So it would be very scary staying the night alone on Mount Everest with the roaring winds and the icy coldness. Climbers have to be very careful. Towers of ice can fall over without warning at any given second, so they have to be extremely careful when climbing. Have a look here. Climbers use aluminium ladders to cross deep cracks in the ice called crevices. The crevices are constantly opening and closing, so it's very dangerous. So crevices are holes or cracks in the ice, and they can close and open at any given point as well. So again, this is just reiterating to us just how dangerous this trek really is. Okay, turn over the page. I'm going to read for us now. Reaching the top of the world, just before midnight, Temba began his final climb. A headlamp lit the darkness. An oxygen mask helped Temba to breathe. Sometimes he'd stop to rest or to change oxygen bottles. Just after sunrise, Temba reached Mount Everest summit. He was higher than anyone else on the planet. Temba planted 2 flags, one for his school, the other was for Nepal. I felt so happy, he said. Okay, guys, how long did it take for Temba to make the final climb? We can find that information on this page.
He reached the top after sunrise.
Very good. He reached the top after sunrise. So because he reached the top after sunrise and he set off before midnight, that lets us know it maybe took him about 6 to 7 hours to climb. Good job, Cherry. Okay, let me just clear this and keep reading. Okay. It is dangerous for climbers to spend more than 10 minutes at the top of Everest. The body needs to get to a lower altitude where there is more oxygen. So when you finally get to the top of Everest, it's a great feeling, but you can't spend too long up there because you're up so high and the air is so thin. So you can spend a little bit of time, but after 10 minutes, you need to get back down. You need to get back down to a safe level of oxygen. So Temba was the youngest person to climb Mount Everest. What an amazing achievement he was able to succeed in doing. Let's look over the next page. Will the mountains survive? Temba survived in the mountains. Now he wants to make sure the mountains survive. The world's mountains face many different threats. Trash is one problem. For a while, Everest was called the world's highest garbage dump. The mountain was littered with tons of trash that climbers left behind, batteries, bottles, and empty oxygen tanks. Many climbers didn't have the time or the strength to carry these things back down with them. Climbers have left garbage on Everest since 1921. Now people are trying to clean up the mess. So it's an amazing experience that you get to do. However, leaving plastic tents, plastic bottles, metal tanks, it's ruining Mount Everest. It's ruining the appearance of it, and it's ruining the environment up there. Global warming is another problem. As Earth gets warmer, mountain glaciers are melting. Himalayan lakes are swelling up with water. When they flood, mountain landscapes will be changed forever. In 2005, the snow cap on Tanzania's Mount Kilimanjaro melted for the first time in history. So there are two really main and big problems that are affecting mountain survival. One is litter from climbers, and the second is global warming. So global warming means the Earth is heating up. The temperature is increasing and increasing each year as it goes on. This means that the glaciers are melting, and it says here in 2005, the snow cap, so the area of snow at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, melted for the first time. This can cause problems because it causes the lakes on the mountains to flood, and this will change the landscape forever. So are the mountains going to survive? After the climb, when Temba came down from Everest, he was thinking about food, not fame. After weeks of camping, he was starving for home cooking. Still, when he flew home to Kathmandu, a huge crowd was waiting. Temba couldn't believe it. I had never seen so many cameras. All of them were pointed at me, he said. Despite the attention, Temba focused on his schoolwork. He needed a good education to achieve his other dream, starting a school in Dolakha. Will Temba succeed? Only time will tell. If you've survived on Everest, however, and reached the top, no goal seems too high. Kathmandu is the capital and largest city of Nepal. So this is a little picture of Kathmandu, where Temba is from. Temba smiled at supporters who greeted him at the Kathmandu airport after he successfully climbed Mount Everest. So obviously he was the youngest person to ever climb the mountain. So he achieved and he gained lots of press. Lots of people wanted to take pictures and videos and write stories about his insanely amazing achievement. And on this page, it lets us know that Temba is really focused on education. Firstly, even though he had become famous, he still focused on his schoolwork, and he needed this good education in school to achieve his other dream. He wanted to start a school in Dolakha. So this lets us know that Temba was really, really, really determined to succeed in educational purposes. Even though he became famous, he didn't want to slack off and leave school. He wanted to finish school, he wanted to do well, and wanted to own his own school all by himself. Okay, guys, so that was the end of our text. So our informational text about surviving Mount Everest. It is a very, very, very difficult trek to climb. And as we can tell from reading the story, Temba was really determined and even failed the first time that he tried to do it. But afterwards, with all the proper equipment and all the correct planning and teamwork, he was able to reach it to the top. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop sharing my screen with you and I'm going to share what our homework is. Our homework is 10 comprehension questions and write the page number. Okay, guys, have a wonderful day. I'll see